All right, welcome back. So it's time to actually start making an app for MovieQuotes. So as mentioned previously, there's going to be an Objective-C version if you want to go get that, but what we're doing is this Swift version. So in the notes, you can click on the Swift version, and it'll take you over into a doc form. So this doc has a bunch of information in it, right? So I mean, you could kind of read it through like a lab, but we're going to use it just kind of for these videos as a basis for kind of organizing what we're doing. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get some starting code. You have two options for getting the starting code. What I recommend, if you've got it, is you actually start from your core data MovieQuotes app. So we made a version that said no core data yet. And what I recommend you do is you just make a copy of this guy. And you can paste them wherever you want. You can do the same folder if you'd like. It doesn't really matter. And then instead of saying no core data yet, I would just call it Swift endpoints. And then I just renamed the outer folder, and I've got a new copy of it. But the inner folder is still called MovieQuotes core data. And if that bothers you, I can show you how to fix that. But if it doesn't bother you, you can just let it go. The other thing that you may remember is my no core data version yet. It actually did have an entity which you can just delete, right? So I started making it in that video before I saved off a copy, but now I've got a copy saved off. So just go ahead and run it and make sure it still works. What this version did is it didn't use core data at all. It just used an array, right? So you just had an array of MovieQuotes. It would probably start off with a couple just because we hard-coded a couple in here. These did not come from core data. They were just hard-coded. And you could just say like test and hello or something like that, just to make sure that it works, right? But the nice thing about this is we don't have any like core data things to worry about yet. Oh, I do have one little goof here. My chevron didn't get made in this version. Oops, I'll go fix that off camera. All right, so I fixed that. I must have too many copies of this because I know I fixed that later, but I just forgot to add the detailed disclosure indicator on the storyboard table view cell. There we go. Now I've got my little chevron back again. Just make sure that this works. Notice when I closed it and opened it up again, I lost my little test, and that was to be expected. All right, so this is going to be the starting point. If you don't have that copy, like you don't have a copy of MovieQuotes no core data yet, here's a version you can get, right? So you can just go click on this link. It'll take you to a GitHub repository, a Swift branch on it, and this just is the same thing that I just made in case for some reason you just don't have your copy somewhere handy. I do prefer you use your copy. It's just kind of more fun to have made it from the ground up. But if you've lost it, feel free to use mine. So what we're going to do first in this is we're going to add one more little piece of UI. And that's we're going to add a little loading MovieQuotes. So when you're loading them up, instead of saying no MovieQuotes, it's just going to say it's loading. And that way if it takes a second or two, a user will have something to watch. And so we're going to add that special UITableViewCell. So we're going to go into the storyboard, and just like we did the no MovieQuotes cell, we're going to make another one called loading MovieQuotes cell. And I'm going to show you two ways to get a little spinner on your table view cell. So go ahead and open up your storyboard. Looks like I'm already here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add a new UITableViewCell prototype. There's two ways to do this. You could take the one that's here already and copy paste it, and that's fine. Or you could actually just come over here and actually find a UITableViewCell and drop it in. If you drop it in, it'll set the type to be custom. I'm going to show you two ways to do it. First, we're going to show you kind of a basic way to do it with the basic cell. So I selected basic. This thing's going to need a reuse identifier, so I'm just going to call it loading MovieQuotes cell. Whenever I type in an identifier, you know what I like to do. I like to go copy it over, and then that way I've got a constant in my code so I don't have to worry about typing it exactly the same. So I'm just going to say let's identifier equal, and then I'm just going to paste that string again. I like to do that and then make it a lowercase l there. I like to do that just so that I don't worry about little typos, right? All right, back to the storyboard. So I got my identifier on this guy, and that's all well and good. But I need to do some more stuff as well. What I want to do is I want to make the title actually say loading MovieQuotes. And I kind of like to make it end with a ... It just kind of feels like it's still kind of in progress. All right, so now I've got that custom prototype UITableViewCell. Now I've got to actually go use it somehow, right? So I'm going to go back into my code. I'm going to try to clean up a little screen real estate there. And what I want to do is I want to actually have a variable. So I'm going to call it initial query complete. And this variable is going to be whether I've done my initial query for quotes or not. I'm going to set it to false by default. And this Boolean, I'm going to set it like in code later. It's going to decide whether I show the no movie quotes. So if I've done the query and there's just none, I show that one. But then if I haven't done it yet, I want to show the loading movie quotes. And in order for this to really be meaningful, you have to comment out your two hard-coded quotes. So just kind of knock them out to start things off. And then find cell for row at index path. This is the main one that makes the cell. So right here you can see that if our movie quotes count is 0, we're going to show a no movie quote cell. What I'd actually like to do is I'd like to say if my initial query is complete, then do one thing, and if it's not, do something different. So what I want to do is I want to just take this and I'm just going to paste it in both spots to start with. I'm going to highlight it and hit Control-I to get my indent. And so if my initial query is complete, then I do want to show that one. If it's not complete, I want to show my loading movie quote cell identifier. So if I run it right now, what I should get, since it's set to false, I should get my loading movie quote cell. And then if you set it to true, you should get your no movie quotes, right? Cool, so those two things look good. I want to do a little bit more than that, though. Whenever you're loading things, it'd be nice to show a spinner. In iOS, they're called activity indicators. So what I would like to do is I would actually like to create an activity indicator. So I'm going to say I'm just going to call it spinner. And so it's called a UI activity indicator. And then as soon as you kind of start writing it, it should help you out. There's a couple different constructors. The one that we want is activity indicator style. Same trick I always do. I hit enter, right arrow, dot, and I get my options. It looks like you can have gray, white, white large, or raw value, which is meaningless. So I want gray. Once I've typed that in, I can shorten my code up a little bit and delete that part. What I want to do with the spinner is I want it to start animating, and then I'm going to set him on the cell's accessory view. So this is kind of a cheap little override. So each cell's got kind of like a spot for a label in the middle. It's actually got a spot for an image to the left, and then it's got an accessory view. I'm just taking over that accessory view and turning it into a spinner, which I think actually works out pretty well. So here's my my little movie quotes, and you can see that it's got its little spinner over here. And I think that just looks a lot better. That's the way that I would probably call this done, but just to show you, there's another way you could do it. Let's say you didn't like putting it on in code, and you didn't really like hijacking the accessory view. You can totally just make your own custom spinner, and then you could put the spinner on the left or the right, depending on what you wanted to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make another UITableViewCell. I will leave this one as custom. And what I'm going to do is whenever you make a custom UITableViewCell, you have to make a class for it as well. So you have to set the custom class. It's just a required thing you have to do. So what I'm going to choose to do here is I'm going to choose to just make a new class. So I'm just going to right click on here and I'm going to say new file. I'm going to say a new CocoaTouch class, and I'm going to say UITableViewCell as my superclass. That probably won't be typed for you, it just happened to be for me. And I'm just going to call this a loading movie quotes table view cell. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it in Swift. I'm going to choose to not make a zip file. This is one thing you could do. You could make it like a separate file. I'm just going to do it right in the storyboard. So I have to make that. I'm going to save it into the default location. It turns out that I don't actually need to write any code in there. It just has to exist so that I could say in here that it is a loading movie quotes table view cell. It's just a requirement of whenever you make a custom table view cell, you have to create a class for it as well. And usually it's necessary, right? Because you want to make connections. It just turns out that this one's so easy, there's no connections we need to make. And what you could do here is you could actually just drag over a spinner, and you could set constraints on it just like you have with views always. So if I want to tie it to the left, I can do that. So I'm just going to right click drag to center him horizontally in the container. And then if I wanted to, I could add a label. And it's the same skills that you've been developing throughout this course, right? So I'm going to add some constraints on this guy. I'm going to say just tie him to the left. I also want him to be centered. If you wanted a different way to do it, you could also click on Editor, Align, Center vertically in Container. That's another way you could do it. And then this label, of course, I don't want it to say label. I want it to say loading movie quotes. ... It looks like it doesn't fit by default. What I like to do is I just click away from it and then click back on it and then hit Command equals. And what that should do is it should snap it to fit. There's other ways you can do that snap to fit using the menu. Cool, so there you go. I've got that little guy. The next thing I need is I need a special identifier for him. So what I'm going to call this, guys, I'm going to call this custom loading movie quote cell. Kind of the longest identifier I've ever used, but that's fine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cheat, right? So I'm just going to, just to show you different ways, I commented out that code where I added the spinner. And right now, if I run it, I would get my old one, but with no spinner. But if I wanted to change it to use this custom one, I could just change only the identifier. And now it should start using my custom one, right? So now it's got my loading and my spinner over on the left. You notice that my spinner is not spinning. That was just my bad. I meant to actually click on it and say for animating, right? So if I select it here, I can check this box that says animating, and it'll just animate right out of the box. So I don't really care which way you implement it. I do want you to implement it one way or the other, right? So either use the custom one, such that you can put it on the left if you like that better. But to be honest, I think that I kind of prefer it over on the right. So, I mean, it doesn't matter to me what you do, but personally, I'm actually going to put mine back to just loading, and I'm going to put back that code that actually started the spinner spinning from code. Don't care which way you do it. I just wanted to show you the custom TableViewCell just because it's really easy to implement this if you want the spinner to look differently. All right, that's all we've got for this time. I just wanted to set up this UI so that when we start needing it later, it's already done up front early. Come back next time. We'll start out on actually doing some endpoints things. All right, see you then. Bye.